revealed. The incredible twist that changed everything for the woman washing dishes at the gala. Clara stood in the bustling kitchen of the Maplewood Country Club, steam rising from hot plates, the sharp clatter of dishes a constant backdrop. Her hands moved with weary precision, scrubbing away remnants of opulent meals served to the town's elite. Each clang of the silverware echoed the dream she held tight for her two children, Drew and Ellie. As she tirelessly washed, visions of a better life flickered. A cozy home, healthy meals at the table, a college diploma for Drew. On this particular evening, the club was dressed in elegance, the air thick with laughter and clinking glasses. Clara caught quick glimpses of gowns that shimmered under the grand chandelier. She suppressed a sigh, feeling the weight of invisibility surround her like a heavy cloak. Outside, the river glimmered under the stars, a stark contrast to the shadows within her heart, where hope battled despair. That when she overheard snippets of conversation about development projects, promises of a future where their town would thrive. The words rang hollow in her ears. What did it mean for her and for families like hers when the economic divide felt insurmountable? Mom! A spark illuminated Drew's face, fresh out of graduation, with dreams alight in his eyes. You should speak up tonight. Let them hear our story. Fear churned in Clara's stomach. Could she truly challenge the status quo that kept them hiding in the shadows? What if they laughed? Or worse, what if they didn't care? Yet the glimmer of her son's ambition broke through the fog of doubt. She nurtured him to dream, to fight for his future. Wasn't he at times she fought for theirs too? As the night unfolded, speeches rose and fell like a tide. One after another, the influential spun tales of prosperity and growth. Clara's heart raced, each proclamation a reminder of the dreams snatched away by life's relentless churn. These voices held an echo of her plight. Then, a moment glimmered in her mind. Clara took a deep breath, pushing through the kitchen door, her trembling hands wiping away the suds as she walked toward the crowd. Anxiety clawed at her throat, an overwhelming emotional tide. She opened her mouth, her voice shaking as she shared their struggles, the late nights, the sacrifices, the pursuit of dignity. What they don't see, she said, is how intertwined our lives really are. Just then, an audible gasp rippled through the crowd. A woman with elegant features stepped forward, the wealthy patron of the development project, eyes wide. Clara? Is that you? Shock froze the evening. You were my father's caregiver. I know you. The room, once filled with echoes of wealth and privilege, held its breath. Clara's story wasn't just her story anymore, it was theirs. Would they connect? Would they care? As the tension built, Clara felt a flicker of hope. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Recognizing the worth of every individual is crucial. Clara pressed on, her heart racing. Let us not forget our people, our families beyond titles and wealth. Hope swelled in Clara's chest, but uncertainty lingered. Would they truly see her? Or would the weight of social prejudice swallow her words once again? As she stood, hope glistening like stars above their heads, the air buzzed with nervous energy. What was unspooling here tonight? Clara found herself teetering on the edge of change, leaving the audience to ponder. Could true transformation arise from hidden connections? And would her moment finally garner the respect she so desperately sought? Clara's voice hung over the crowd, a fragile thread connecting her to the more affluent members of the community. She glanced out at their faces, searching for signs of understanding. For an instant, she was lost in the memories of those late nights, her children's laughter echoing through their cramped apartment. Would her past resonate with the people who had lived the life she longed for? The woman who recognized her stepped closer, her expression shifting from shock to concern. Clara, I remember you. You were there for my father when he was sick. You cared for him like family. There was warmth in her voice, a flicker of humanity amidst the glitz. Thank you, Clara managed, feeling her heart thud painfully in her chest. But before she could continue, murmurs rippled through the assembly. She could feel their eyes narrowing, skepticism creeping in like a slow tide, ready to wash away any glimmers of solidarity. Why should we care? A man called out, his brow furrowed. We all have our struggles. A wave of disappointment washed over Clara. Was this what she feared? That her truth would fall on deaf ears? Yet the moment drew out something deeper, igniting a familiar flame of determination within her. Because our struggles matter, she said, her voice louder now, tinged with desperation. When you thrive, we thrive. We're all part of this community, whether you acknowledge us or not. The crowd was silent for the briefest moment, tension palpable. Clara felt Drew's presence beside her, his steadfast gaze pushing her forward. You know, we work hard to give our children a better life. When I wash those dishes, I hope for a future where they can dream and soar. I want them to feel valued. Another voice broke through, filled with disbelief. But how can we help if we don't even know the details? Details? Clara's heart thumped. Maybe this was what was needed to invite them into her world, to show them. Not just tell them. Let me share a story, she replied, wringing her hands nervously. When Ellie was sick last year, I couldn't afford the medication. I cried in the bathroom so she wouldn't see. I borrowed money, not knowing if I'd ever pay it back. That fear. It haunts us. More gasps filled the air. Whispers exchanged as the story settled among them like a dust cloud over forgotten memories. Faces softened, the hard lines etched by privilege wavering. The woman who had called her out took a step forward. What if we pooled resources? What if we connected with more families in need? A surge rippled through Clara, a powerful mix of hope and disbelief. Was this truly happening? This wealthy woman and these influential leaders considering a way to reach out, to lend a hand where they had only given a nod before? I'd love that, Clara said, her heart soaring with the possibility of change. But it must come from truth, not pity. Only then can we create the connection our town needs. The crowd seemed to nod in agreement, the tension lifting like a morning fog. Clara's voice was now steady. If you want to know what we truly need, then come and listen. To us. With us. Applause began softly, hesitant. It built into a wave of sound, echoing around the banquet hall. Clara had nudged open a door, her words like gentle hands, had encouraged this new understanding. But as Clara basked in the warmth of their newfound openness, a thought crept into her mind. What would Manny, the foreman who worked tirelessly but was often overlooked due to his background, say? She'd seen the shame in his eyes when jobs were lost, when the town's wealthy turned their heads. She felt again the weight of her own unspoken struggles. Could their connection grow even deeper? She knew then that speaking from her experience was only the beginning. But could she dare to bring Manny's story, and others, into the light? As she pondered this, Clara felt a spark of fear alongside her hope. Would the community be ready to embrace countless stories, not just hers? Behind her, Drew's voice was a whisper, Mom, this is only the start. And in her heart, Clara believed him. But would the town be open to this new chapter, brimming with potential? The night crackled with energy and Clara's heart raced. What awaited them down this path of revelation? Clara stepped back, her heart still racing from the applause, the warmth surging through her. She felt a sense of mingled triumph and trepidation. What if this was just a fleeting moment of kindness that wouldn't last? Could she sustain it? Around the hall, conversations began to bloom, every voice a seed of possibility. She saw the woman who had spoken earlier now leaning in with a group, animatedly discussing how they might pool their resources, share their strengths. Clara's breath caught in her throat. Maybe it wasn't just about her story, it was about the stories they could weave together. Let us get the ball rolling, Drew said, nudging her gently with an encouraging smile. You've got them listening. You've already sparked something. Right, Clara whispered, still feeling hesitant. But what if they don't really want to know? Then we show them, he replied, determination sinking in his voice like a firm anchor. You've done the hard part. They're curious now. Clara looked at her son, seeing his belief in her igniting another flicker of courage within. Maybe Drew was right. In the corner of the hall, she spotted Manny. He stood apart from the crowd, his expression one of uncertainty. Clara knew that look all too well, the weight of feeling unseen. She needed to reach him. Manny, she called, approaching him with purpose. As she got closer, she could see the tension in his shoulders. Hey, Clara, he replied, his voice constrained. Didn't he expect to see you here? I'm talking to them about our lives. About us, she said, her voice gaining strength. They're opening up, really listening. You should share your story too. Manny chuckled bitterly, shaking his head. My story? They wouldn't understand. I'm just some guy who repairs things. But that's not true. You're one of the hardest workers I know. You help keep this town functioning. Clara's words spilled forth, as passionate as they were truthful. You've seen things I could only imagine. If you don't speak up for yourself, who will? Manny looked away, processing her words. Clara felt her heart ache for him. She reached out and gently placed a hand on his arm. If we really want change, we need to bring the whole community together, multiply our stories. Yours matters, Manny. Promise. His eyes flickered with uncertainty. She knew he had been through so much, carried burdens that weighed him down. But along with the fear, Clara also saw the flicker of hope igniting within him. I don't know, he stammered, glancing at the crowd. What if it just turns into pity? No, Clara said, squeezing his arm reassuringly. It's about connection. It's about showing the truth of our lives. Pain, joy, and everything in between. You just have to be brave enough to share it. Manny's gaze traveled back to the gathering around them. He took a deep breath, visibly wrestling with his fears. Maybe I could try. Good. Come on, she urged, leading him towards the group. You don't have to do it alone. We're in this together. As they approached, Clara felt a swell of support from the gathering crowd. People began to peel away from their small groups, drawn toward Manny and Clara. Conversations shifted, becoming a tapestry of lives intermingling, hopes intertwining. Hey everyone, this is Manny, Clara announced, her heart pounding in rhythm with the moment. He's one of the hardest working people I know. Let him share his thoughts on what it's like to struggle and succeed. All eyes turned to Manny, who swallowed hard, anxiety wrapping around him like a thick fog. But Clara could almost see the moment when he seemed to break through his personal barrier, a spark igniting behind his eyes. Okay. Here goes, he said, voice shaky but increasingly resolute. I've been the guy behind the scenes for too long. It's time to let you all in on my story. The atmosphere shifted. Clara could feel the energy, charged and electric, as Manny began to speak. It was raw, unfiltered, and honest. She could sense the community was ready to embrace not just his words but the multitude of stories waiting to be unveiled. But as Clara watched him blossom into the moment, doubts crept back in. Would this willingness to share lead to real understanding, or would it all fade back into silence once the night ended? The stakes were high, and her heart raced with anticipation for what came next. Would they truly listen? Would transformation blossom from their collective stories? The evening unfolded like a canvas, with every voice a brushstroke, colorful yet uncertain. And as Manny shared his truth, Clara felt the tremors of change rippling through the room, awakening not just hope but fear for the road ahead. Could they truly change the narrative of their lives together? Clara's breath hitched at the thought. What consequences could emerge from this act of vulnerability? Manny's voice rose and fell, weighing heavy in the room. Clara stood close, every word he spoke fueling the silent fire weaving through the audience. His story was tangled with hardship, days filled with toil that never felt quite acknowledged. She watched as those around him leaned in, eyes widening, their hearts beating together as they listened, each person connected to the vulnerability he dared to show it was a beautiful, terrifying thing to witness. Clara felt her own doubts retreat slightly, though they still lingered uninvited. They watched desperately, as if waiting for a punchline to land, and she couldn't numb her heart to the fear of disappointment. Would this moment pass like smoke, unnoticed and fleeting? Gradually Manny shifted his tone from hesitant to passionate. Working on old cars, I see so many folks just like me. We struggle to keep things running, even when it feels like everything's falling apart. But what I've learned is, you can't do it alone. You need a community. His words resonated deeply, causing nods and whispers of agreement to ripple through the crowd. Clara's heart swelled. Suddenly, Manny was no longer the quiet repairman on the sidelines. He was a voice, a leader. Maybe it's not about fixing what's broken, he continued, his eyes scanning the faces, locking onto those of the people who had once felt like strangers. Maybe it's about creating something new altogether. At that moment, a wave of understanding washed over the crowd. Clara glanced sideways, Drew's face was alight with pride, a small smile creeping across his lips. The nervous tension in the air shifted to a feeling of solidarity, the kind that could start a movement. As Manny shared more, Clara saw a few people tear up. She recognized that look of revelation and connection sparking within their hearts as they began to relate his struggles to their own. Yet, just as the energy reached a crescendo, the door at the back of the hall creaked open. A tall, imposing figure stepped inside the mayor. Clara's heart dropped. She felt the tension whip through the room like a gust of wind. What was the mayor doing here? Manny faltered momentarily, his confidence clashing with the unexpected disruption. The mayor scanned the crowd, his presence creating an unsettling shift in the atmosphere. Clara felt a knot form in her stomach. "Good evening, folks," the mayor called, his voice echoing above the murmurs. "I hope I'm not interrupting. I was just passing by and couldn't help but notice the gathering." Clara saw Manny's expression turn from fierce to apprehensive, uncertainty creeping back into his features. The warmth of the moment felt fragile, as if a strong breeze could scatter it in an instant. "Interesting concepts you're discussing," the mayor said, steepling his fingers. "Change in the community, working together, we can certainly use those ideas." His tone was ambiguous, but Clara sensed condescension lurking behind his words. Manny cleared his throat, trying to regain his momentum. "We're sharing our stories, talking about struggles no one sees," he said, steel returning to his voice. "We know we can do better together." The mayor's brow furrowed slightly. Clara could feel the currents of resistance grow strong. The crowd was preparing to defend the importance of their voices, their stories. Would they stand behind Manny? Would they let their stories matter in front of the mayor? A tension hung in the air, one that could either erupt into conflict or flow into deeper understanding. Clara's heart raced at the crossroads they faced. Manny took a deep breath, squeezing Clara's hand for strength. "This isn't just my story. It's about all of us who keep going even when the odds are against us." Clara's breath caught again. It was a pivotal moment, their vulnerability against the weight of authority. Would they find courage in unity? Or would the mayor's presence stifle their newfound fire? As silence filled the hall, Clara's heart trembled with uncertainty. But beneath that was a flicker of determination. Would they dare to push back and advocate for what they truly desired? The tension peaked. The question hung in the air like a fragile promise, one that could change everything. Would they stand together? Or would they fade back into silence? A heartbeat of silence enveloped the room as Clara held her breath, waiting for what would happen next. The mayor, with his sharp gaze, studied those gathered. There was a palpable crack in the usual monotony of town meetings, a spark of common purpose that threatened to ignite. Manny adjusted his stance, channeling the energy of the crowd that looked back at him, a motley assembly of battered faces and resilient spirits. "We've all struggled, and it's time to share those stories," he declared. "It's time to be heard." The murmur that followed was electric. Clara could sense it, the shifting mood, the rising tide of collective strength. People were nodding now, casting sidelong glances at one another, an unspoken agreement forming among them, the kind that came from shared experience and raw honesty. The mayor's gaze darted around the room like a predator calculating his next move. "I appreciate your passion, Manny. But passion alone won't fix the problems we face. Change requires funding, resources." His voice was steady, but Clara saw the glimmer of panic in his eyes. He was losing control. "Maybe it starts here with us," Drew chimed in, his voice clear and bold. "We've got ideas, people ready to work. We can be part of the solution." "Exactly." Manny's voice had gained momentum. "We are here because we have dreams for our community. Imagine what we could do together." The crowd erupted into applause, a ripple of encouragement echoing off the walls. It was more than applause. It was a roar of resolve, a wave of commitments made in that instant. Clara's heart soared and a smile broke free on her face. Despite the mayor's presence, despite the authority he wielded, this felt like a revolution waiting to happen. But then the mayor raised his hand, attempting to silence the growing enthusiasm. "Let us not get ahead of ourselves. It'll take more than just voices rallying. You must understand, maybe it takes more than just promises from you." A voice rang out from the crowd, an older woman with gray hair and fierce eyes. "You want us to stay quiet while you sit in power? I think we've had enough of that." Gasps rippled through the audience, the tension now crackling with possibilities. Clara felt alive, the air surged with shared courage. This was no longer just a battle against apathy, it was a call to arms. "We deserve to be heard," shouted another voice, and the room erupted again. Each exclamation became a part of a joyous symphony, the kind that shook the very foundation of their shared reality. Seeing that his words were turning to ash, the mayor squared his shoulders, a smirk flickering across his face as if he held all the cards. "I admire your spirit truly. But remember, the council won't act without clear plans. You need to present something concrete if you want to secure any help." A wave of confusion rolled through the people. The reality set in that they couldn't just fight, there had to be a plan, action behind the passion. Clara felt a twist in her stomach, the uncertainty returning like a shadow. Manny stepped forward again, eyes ablaze. "Then let us make a plan," he exclaimed. "Together, we take action, and we're not waiting for someone else to tell us how." The crowd erupted again, emotions swirling like autumn leaves caught in a gust of wind. Clara looked around at the rallying faces, and for the first time, doubt felt like a distant memory. They weren't alone. The mayor shifted, his confidence starting to falter under the rising momentum. Clara could see the realization creeping in. These people weren't backing down. But just as the plan began to form in the air, a sharp sound cut through the gathering. A phone rang insistently from within the mayor's pocket. The atmosphere stuttered. The spell of unity momentarily shattered as everyone turned their eyes toward him as the mayor pulled out his phone, his face drained of color. Clara couldn't shake the feeling that this moment could change everything. What had just happened that demanded his urgent attention? "What now?" she whispered, her heart pounding with anxious anticipation. The answer loomed just out of sight, but the tensions that had just been ignited were far from extinguished. Would this phone call alter the course of their fight? Or would it be the spark that ignited a fire they couldn't put out? Clara leaned forward, her heart racing. The mayor's expression, once confident, was now marred by a mix of disbelief and dread. He glanced at the screen of his phone, the urgency of the call clear in his posture. The murmurs in the room died down, replaced by a tense silence that hung heavy in the air. "Danny," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't just a name. It had weight, a gravity that threw Clara off balance. Her mind whirled. Who was Danny? The mayor pressed the phone tighter to his ear, his face contorting as he absorbed the information. Clara could see the veins in his neck pulse, the fear rippling through him like a wave. The crowd was still, waiting, breath held, eyes glued to the drama unfolding before them. "I understand, I'll be there," the mayor finally said, his tone grim as he ended the call with a flick of his finger. He looked up, and in that fleeting moment, the facade of control fell away completely. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice shaky. "There's been an accident down at the river." A collective gasp filled the room. Panic and concern spread like wildfire, igniting worry on every face that bore witness. The river had taken on a life of its own in recent weeks, swelling from excess rainfall. Clara could feel the heat of her heart in her throat. What if someone was in danger? "Please, I need to leave," he continued, running a hand through his thinning hair. "I don't know the details yet, but I'm required to go. We can reconvene later." "Wait," Manny shouted, his voice sharp with urgency. "We need to know what's happening. Can we help? Do you need assistance?" The mayor paused, looking torn. The vulnerability on his face softened Clara's heart, if only for a moment. This was a man gripped by fear, not just of circumstance but of losing control. "I'll call for volunteers. We'll need people to assist with the safety efforts," he said, quickly pulling himself together. "Please stay here and discuss your plans. I'll be back as soon as I can." And with that, the mayor turned and rushed out the door, leaving a flurry of uncertain murmurs in his wake. Clara's mind raced. The river could be a disaster waiting to unfold. "Let us focus," Drew bellowed, bringing the scattered energy back to the room. "We can't let this derail us. The people down there need our strength too." His words felt almost magnetic, and the crowd began to clap again, a rhythm building. Clara nodded, her determination rekindled. "That's right. We can prepare now. If they need volunteers, we can organize quickly." But as they grabbed their phones and began making calls, Clara's thoughts drifted. What was happening at the river? Was someone trapped? Panic rushed through her veins. She needed to find out. Clara. Manny's voice broke through her thoughts. What do you think we should do next? She took a deep breath, her resolve solidifying. We need to ensure people have the resources to respond. Let's gather supplies and figure out how to mobilize. Every minute counts. The crowd started buzzing with ideas again. Half glances exchanged. A shared sense of focus shifting the ambience back to action. Clara felt a renewed hope. Perhaps this was the moment they needed. A chance to rise together and show their true strength. But deep down, a troubling fear lingered. A sense that this twist of fate was only the beginning of something much bigger. As the meeting continued, Clara's eyes drifted toward the door where the mayor had departed. What kind of revelations lay ahead? What secrets lurked beneath the surface of that urgent call? With her heart pounding and determination unfurling, she could sense that the answer was already waiting just beyond the horizon, ready to plunge them deeper into uncertainty. Would they be ready for whatever awaited them? The room pulsed with a mix of energy and anxiety as Clara and the others sprang into action. Phones buzzed with messages and calls, while new ideas and plans flowed like water to fill the chaos left in the mayor's abrupt departure. There was no time to waste. The air hung thick with the scent of urgency as Clara's eyes darted around, gauging the urgency of everyone's efforts. Okay, let us split into teams, Drew shouted, his voice cutting through the chatter. We need someone to gather supplies, another team can head down towards the river, and a few should coordinate with emergency services. Clara felt the ember of her determination glow brighter. I'll take the supply team, she declared, emboldened by the rising spirit around her. A few heads nodded in agreement. Clara quickly jotted down a list of essentials. Blankets, first aid kits, flashlights, and snacks. Anything that might help those battling the swelling river, those in her community. As the groups formed, her mind raced. What if lives were at stake? Clara couldn't shake the image of a child lost in the current, a father desperately searching, or a mother standing helpless, her heart full of fear. It sent chills down her spine. Let us move. She called to her team, scanning the room one last time. The organized flurry swirled around her, filled with purpose and connection. They needed to help one another, to work together. This wasn't just another meeting, it was a call to action, a chance to prove that when their community was threatened, they would rise. Outside, the evening air was charged with tension as they loaded a truck with supplies. Clara's heart pounded, each beat echoing her resolve. They drove as fast as they could. The roads were slick with recent rain, but Clara refused to let fear win. As they approached the river, the first glimpse of the scene unfolded like a nightmare. Chaos erupted before her eyes. Emergency trucks lined the bank, their lights flashing, illuminating the panic and desperation. Clara's breathing quickened. This moment was all too real. People scrambled with makeshift ropes, calling out instructions as onlookers gathered. The river, swollen and angry, roared with power, almost alive. Every instinct in her body screamed to turn away, yet Clara's feet remained rooted, drawn in closer by an invisible pull. Drew, now beside her, fixed her with a determined look. There's a lot going on. Let us figure out where we're needed, he urged, gesturing towards a group of firefighters. She nodded, her heart aching for those trapped in the swirling water. We have to help, she whispered, fighting against the knot of fear in her throat. As they approached the firefighters, a man emerged, soaked and trembling. A look of horror etched across his face. They need backup. 2 kids are still out there, he gasped, pointing toward the river where angry currents struggled to reclaim lost lives. Clara's gut twisted painfully. Those children, suddenly, everything became starkly real. Then she spotted something floating near the bank. Was it hope or despair? Stay here, Drew instructed Clara, but before he could stop her, she dashed toward the water's edge. Every instinct told her to turn back, yet the thought of those kids pushed her forward. A scream pierced the air, and Clara turned just in time to see the water engulf a small figure. Her heart dropped. There was no time to lose. What if Clara couldn't keep her promise to save them? She felt the weight of doubt settle around her. Would they all make it back safely? Or was she stepping into a deeper nightmare? With a rush of adrenaline coursing through her veins, Clara reached the water's edge, her gaze fixed on the spot where she'd seen the child disappear. The roar of the river consumed her thoughts, drowning out everything else. She took a deep breath, her heart pounding like a drum. Help! Someone save them! Clara shouted, her voice cracking. She spotted a prolonged, desperate hand reaching out from the current, a child's face barely visible between the foamy waves. Clara! Get back! Drew's voice echoed behind her, but fear propelled her forward. Without thinking, she ripped off her shoes and tossed her backpack aside. The icy water bit into her ankles as she pressed deeper, feeling the force of the current tugging at her. It was terrifying, but she couldn't stop. Not now. Every step felt like a battle, the water pushing against her thighs as she reached for the child, her body straining against the icy grip of panic. With one last surge, she sprinted through the rushing torrent, her vision honed in on the hand that had broken the surface once more. She could see fear in the child's wide eyes, a mirror of what she felt inside. Hold on. I'm coming, she yelled, stretching her arm out as far as she could. The child's tiny fingers grasped for her, trembling like leaves in the wind. Clara finally made contact. She wrapped her hand around the child's wrist, a lifeline against the torrent's wrath. Just as she pulled with all her strength, she heard a crack echo in the distance, a shout from Drew warning of danger. But there was no turning back now. The little girl was only a few feet away, her eyes pleading, pulling with everything she had. Clara felt her feet slip on the wet stones. She stumbled but refused to let go. In a blinding moment of clarity, she remembered the supplies they had brought. Get a rope! She screamed at Drew, who darted into action. The girl's face was turning pale, and Clara's heart constricted with urgency. You're okay. Just keep fighting. You're strong. She could barely hear her own voice over the rushing water. Moments felt like hours as she struggled against the force that threatened to sweep both of them away. Suddenly Drew was there, a sturdy rope in hand. He tossed it toward her, and it landed just out of reach. Clara! It's now or never. With a determined push, Clara lunged for the rope, her fingers brushing the coarse fibers as she secured it under one arm while still holding the child. Got it! She shouted back. Along the bank, fire trucks and bystanders watched, breaths held in a collective gasp. Clara could see the worried faces around her, neighbors, friends, but they would have to wait. There were lives on the line. Drew! She cried now. Pulling with all their might, they worked together, her strength fading but not her resolve. The girl was nearly free when another loud crack echoed through the air. Clara glanced up just in time to see part of the bank give way, slipping into the river with a roar. No, she gasped, but there was no time to react. She felt the ground beneath her falter as if threatening to swallow her whole. In one wild moment they broke the surface, the child tumbling into Clara's arms as Drew yanked them both back. The three of them crashed onto the bank, gasping for dear life, soaked but alive. Clara! You did it! Drew's voice broke through the haze of exhaustion, but Clara barely registered it. All she could do was hold the trembling child close, her heart racing against the backdrop of sirens and chaos. But as Clara looked into the child's wide eyes, questions flooded her mind. Who had been out there with her? Were there others? And why had the ground below started to give way? The river had shared another secret, and she was both grateful and terrified. Clara! Drew interrupted her thoughts, urgency threading his tone. We need to find the others now. What else could the rising river hide? The truth was just beginning to unfold, and Clara was determined to face every current head-on. Clara's breath came in ragged gasps as she clutched the child to her chest, her heart pounding in sync with the distant wailing of sirens. The little girl shivered, wrapping her arms around Clara as if drawing strength from the embrace. Drew was still catching his breath beside them, his brow furrowed with alarm. We have to move, he said, scanning the bank. More people might be in trouble. Clara nodded, still shaken but fueled by a single thought, finding anyone who might still be trapped. She set the child down gently, kneeling to meet her wide eyes. What's your name? Clara whispered, trying to maintain eye contact amid the chaos. Lila, the girl whispered, her voice barely audible over the rush of the water. There was fragility in her tone that tugged at Clara's heart. Lila, Clara repeated, taking a steadying breath. Can you tell me if anyone else is out there? Lila's gaze shifted to the river, a silent dread crossing her face. My brother, he felt her voice cracked, tears welling up in her eyes. Clara's stomach dropped. Where? Over there, Lila pointed weakly toward a bend in the river, just up from where they stood. Panic surged in Clara's chest, but she had no time to falter. Stay close, Lila. Drew, we need to check that spot. No. Lila cried out, gripping Clara's arm with fear. The water, it's so strong. I know, but we have to try, Clara said, a steadiness creeping back into her voice. We can't leave anyone behind. Drew nodded resolutely. He grabbed Clara's arm. I'll go with you. We have to be careful. If the ground gives way again, Clara could see that he was terrified, but he knew the stakes. They all did. They started to make their way along the bank toward the bend, Clara glancing back at Lila, whose face was soaked with tears as they moved. Each step felt heavier. Clara's mind raced. What if they find him? What if they don't? She had no right to hope. It felt dangerous, reckless. Still, she willed herself to push forward and cling to the sparks of determination. When they reached the bend, Clara crouched low again, peering into the murky water. Can you see him anywhere? She asked Lila, who swayed slightly as if holding back a wave of emotion. Lila shook her head, panic radiating from her tiny frame. He has gone. No, Clara said, clenching her fists. We can't believe that. We have to look. They called out for Lila's brother, their voices drowned by the water's roar. Each shout echoed back, empty and mocking. Then for a brief moment, all sound fell silent. Clara! Drew hissed, pointing toward the edge of the river. Something caught the sunlight, a flash of color. What is that? Where? Clara rushed to his side, her heart racing. There. He pointed again, and this time Clara saw it too. A small shoe half submerged in the mud. It has to be his. Maybe he was pulled under. Clara shouted, the thought terrifying her. We have to find him. Drew grabbed the rope. Lila, stay back. With urgency pushing her forward, Clara reached toward the shoe, her fingers trembling. As she tugged it free from the mud, a fresh surge of hope bloomed. In that moment, the river whispered shadows of the truth that there was still a chance. Suddenly, a shout broke through the air behind them, jerking Clara's attention back. Firefighters are here. A voice, echoing through the murmur of the crowd. Yet Clara could feel the river was just beginning to reveal its darker secrets. As Drew turned to assist Lila further from the edge, Clara dared to look back. Clara, are you ready? We need to wrap this up and let the pros take over. But Clara hesitated. She noticed something else just beyond the water, more shadows lurking. Shapes that seemed to rise and fall with the current. A shiver ran down her spine. What had she unleashed by coming here? Drew. Wait. But it was too late. As the realization hit, the ground trembled again, and the river rushed forth as if to reclaim what it had lost. What other secrets lay hidden beneath the surface? Clara's heart raced as the next wave crashed, the river rumbling with a threat she could almost hear. The water surged, rising aggressively just as panic rose in Clara's chest. She felt the earth beneath her shake, and her instincts screamed for her to run. But she couldn't abandon Lila or her brother. Lives hung in the balance and they needed her. Drew, get back! She shouted as the river churned violently ahead. But even as her words left her mouth, she could sense that time was slipping away, like sand through her fingers. Clara looked down at Lila, whose small frame was trembling with fear. Lila, I need you to stay back and hold tight to your brother's shoe. Clara instructed firmly. Can you do that for me? Can you be brave? With tears streaking down her cheeks, Lila nodded, clutching the shoe like it was a lifeline. Drew, still on high alert, crept away from the bank's edge, his eyes darting around. Clara, we should wait for the firefighters to get here, he insisted. No time, she urged, adrenaline coursing through her veins. That child could be in danger. We can't waste another second. As the chaotic scene unfolded around them, Clara felt an inexplicable surge of courage. There was hope wrapped in action. This was their moment to save a life. She turned back to the river, fixing the spot where she'd seen that flash of movement, where other shapes mingled underneath, hitching her breath in determination. Clara grabbed onto the thoughts of all those who had struggled. Drew, Ellie, Manny, and the countless families whose stories intertwined with hers. They deserved better. Drew, let us check if we can find him, she said, her voice gaining strength. We need to form a human chain. I'll go in. Drew hesitated, but desperation flashed in his eyes. You can't go alone. If the ground gives way, we'll be in danger. We need to do this together. Clara held his gaze, her heart in her throat. We can't wait for someone else to save him. Sometimes we have to step into the unknown to find where we truly belong. Drawing in a breath, Clara steadied her feet, planting them firmly in the soft banks along the river. With a heavy conviction, she took that first brave step toward the water, feeling the cold water lap against her legs. Clara! Drew shouted behind her, but she knew they had no choice. They had to try. Hand in hand they began to wade deeper, fighting against the swirling force pulling them back. And as Clara persisted, she kept searching for the boy, calling his name, her voice cracking against the raging water. Please, we're here to help. We won't abandon you. Just then Clara caught a fleeting glimpse, a shadow beneath the water, shifting against the current. Her heart pounded more fiercely than ever. Drew, over there. I saw something. Without waiting for confirmation, she pushed through the frigid water, reaching desperately for the child, believing that anyone could survive this chaos. Beneath her hand raked against what felt like a small wrist. Was it real? Heart pounding, she pulled with everything she had, the river swirling beneath her in a terrifying embrace. Hold on. I've got you, she cried, the thrill and terror igniting her spirit. With a final yank, Clara surged against the current. Lower the rope, Drew called. The freshly tied ropes from the rescue team landed at just the right moment. As she grasped tightly onto the child's small wrist, she felt the strength of Drew anchoring behind her. He and Clara heaved together, forcing back the suffocating weight of the current. We'll not let go, she cried, determination and fear intertwining. Lila, who had been an echo of soft whimpers, now watched with wide eyes, clutching her brother's shoe still. You're fine. You're safe, Clara promised. Together, against the tumultuous water, they pulled until finally the child floated to the surface, eyes blinking against the sudden air. Oh my God, Drew gasped as they pulled him from the merciless grip, collapsing onto the bank, breaths ragged, hearts pounding in relief. Clara held the child tightly to her chest, tears streaming down her face. He coughed out water and looked up at her, confusion and fear swirling in his innocent eyes. You're going to be okay. I promise, she whispered fiercely. Lila rushed forward, collecting her brother in a tight embrace, the bond of family holding them firm. As they leaned into one another, Clara felt a powerful sense of resolution wash over her. In the dimming glow of the sunset, the firefighters arrived fully equipped, moving with a focused urgency that reverberated hope among the crowd. Their united efforts surged forward, saving lives with determination. As Clara and Drew surrendered to the warmth of solidarity that enveloped the riverbank, a familiar voice broke through. You all did amazing work. Manny's face beamed with pride as he approached, rallying others to join in the heart of their community. What started as uncertainty had shifted to empowerment. It became clear that this night would not only change lives but foster a rebirth of connectivity in their town, each voice, story, and connection weaving together a powerful tapestry of collective resilience. Clara stepped back, breathless, as she looked at the faces around her. There was recognition in their eyes, a promise that the stories they shared mattered, that they would lift each other up in times of trial and strength. Together, Clara whispered, feeling the vibrations of solidarity, hope, and love echo around her. Yes, we can do this together. With the river still flowing nearby, Clara's heart surged, knowing this was more than a moment. It was the beginning of a transformation that would ripple across her community. The road ahead was long, but hand in hand, they would face it all together. And as Clara stood there, surrounded by her loved ones and newfound allies, she understood the importance of connection, the strength that flourished when stories were shared. That night they began to forge a new path, one that would empower not just them but generations to come. Now it was time for you to take action. You need to subscribe now to hear more inspiring stories like Clara's journey. Leave a like to fuel this movement and spread hope for those who feel unseen. Comment below and share your thoughts or reactions about this incredible ending. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness such powerful transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Together we can be a part of something greater.